there are a lot of new releases coming up that I'm so excited for. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be talking about new releases from Asian authors that I'm so excited for. Books that are coming out in a couple months, books that are coming out in the later half of 2021, and they're just so amazing. And I thought that I would make this video to uplift Asian voices, especially at a time where it's really important to stand up for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, as well as just Asian people in general, since there is a lot of hatred happening in the community and a lot of people are actually getting hurt from a lot of different hate crimes that I'm obviously really upset about and that I want to talk about, but also just to celebrate the fact that there is a really big need for diversity and inclusion in publishing. Growing up, I never really saw myself in books, never really saw myself in media. Really impacted me a lot, and now that publishers are actually listening to us, it's only for us to keep up the momentum and to keep up our excitement so that they will know that they have to keep doing it and that it's not just a one-time thing. So with all that being said, I have a lot of new books that are coming out that I really want to talk about so that you guys can add to your TBRs as well as mine. So basically this video is actually kind of inspired from Lacey Book Lovers, and basically she made a video where she talked about a lot of books written by Asian authors that she really enjoyed, and then she also talked about up and coming new releases that she's really excited for, specifically in the romance genre. Now this video is inspired by her. I'm going to be specifically only talking about new releases that are coming up, and also I'm going to be talking about different genres as well, from YA to middle grade to romance in general. Now, really, if I wanted to be really honest, this video was also really inspired and triggered by the fact that I read the synopsis of this one book, and I would literally tell you right now that I would sell half my collection of my books just to get this one book. This one's called You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao, and now this book actually releases in November 2nd, 2021, and I'm like so upset because I have to wait so long for this book. But basically, if you guys ever watch that Japanese anime movie called Your Name, then you would absolutely love this book, mostly because it kind of follows a similar plot line. Basically what happens is that our main heroine is really in love with her boyfriend. They're gonna live the perfect life. They already have plans to marry each other and to kind of like go forth and have a family after graduating from high school, then moving on to college. You know, they have their whole lives planned out. But what happens is that her boyfriend Sam actually passes away, and then now she's really upset. She doesn't go to the funeral, she doesn't really talk to anybody, and she's heartbroken over it. She decides to give one last phone call to Sam's phone, hoping to hear Sam's voice message and to hear his voice for comfort. But what really happens is that Sam picks up the phone call and they actually are able to have a conversation, and she's holding on to this piece desperately, hoping to like always have this phone call of Sam and to have this connection with him. But in reality and in real life, she sees the damages that are happening because of Sam's death, and it's going to be really heartbreaking, and I know I'm going to cry. It's from a debut author, so I'm super excited for this one. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually a YA fantasy novel called Six Crimson Cranes, and this one's from Elizabeth Lim. This one's going to be released on July 6, 2021, and this one is basically YA fantasy with magic. So our main heroine has really great superpowers, and then on the day of her wedding it kind of explodes, and then afterwards her evil stepmother banishes her from the kingdom, turns her brothers into cranes, and then now it's kind of like up to her to kind of like try to figure out like how to do it. And then also the stepmother took away her voice so that she can't even speak, so she's voiceless as well. So I think this one's going to be really interesting. The only reason why I'm talking about Elizabeth Lim is because I read her story retelling of Mulan from Disney Hyperion, and I really enjoyed that one. So I think Elizabeth does really well with YA fantasy, and she writes books that I really enjoy in YA fantasy, even though I'm not a big YA fantasy reader. So the next book that I want to talk about is this book called Xoxo by Ali O, and this book comes out on July 13th, 2021. This one is about a girl who meets a guy in a karaoke bar, and then afterwards they hit it off, but then they are like two totally different people. We have our main heroine who's very strict, no nonsense, wants to go to school, wants to do well in school, wants to get a good job. Then we have our hero who is very fun, flirty, and he kind of goes out and has fun all the time. They decide to go out on one really long date. Fast forward 3 months, our main heroine is actually going to South Korea to take care of her ailing grandmother, and then the neighbor is actually that guy that she met back in where she used to live. And then afterwards, that guy is also a member of one of the biggest K-pop groups out there in South Korea, and she did not know that. So I think this one's going to be really fun, especially if you love K-pop. So the next book that I want to talk about is this book called How We Fall Apart by Katie Zhao. And now this one is about high school students who are really competing for like the best grades in their school so that they can go to the elite schools that they want to go. And it follows these 4 friends who realize that they are being accused of murder when the top ranked student is found dead. And now everybody is kind of like pointing their fingers at each other and not really knowing who is the main suspect. And I think this one's going to be really fun and really interesting. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually a book that I recently hauled in one of my book hauls. This one's called Sunny Song Will Never Be Famous by Suzanne Park. And Suzanne Park is a Korean American novelist. She wrote a lot of books last year. She published 2 novels actually last year, one YA and one romance. And then now she's doing the same thing again. So this one is her second YA book, which comes out on June 1st, 2021, and it's basically about a social media influencer who needs to do a detox. So she actually goes to a camp and then she meets a lot of people, does a lot of crazy things, and also falls in love too. So the next book that I'm really excited for is actually this book called Of Princess and Promises by Sania Manon. And now this book comes out on June 1st, 2021 too. So that is actually my birthday, and that means my birthday has a lot of books that are coming out that I'm super excited for. Now this one is the second book in a Rosetta Academy series. The first book in the series was actually a book called Of Kisses and Curses. I read that book last year, freaking adored it, freaking loved it. I just love the atmosphere that Sania like produced, and had like some fantasy elements to it too as well. I was really captivated and enthralled by that YA fantasy novel, or by that YA contemporary romance novel, if you really count it as, you know, kind of contemporary, because, you know, the fantasy wasn't that big. But anyways, this one's Of Princess and Promises, and this one follows our like other character that was seen in that book series, and this is her redemption novel, and where she falls in love with the right person. And I'm really excited for this one, mostly because I know that Sania won't fail me. So moving on to middle grade, I love middle grade and young reader novels. And if you guys have seen my videos before, I basically talk about Mindy Kim a lot. So I'm really excited for this one. This one's book number 5 in Mindy Kim series. This one's called Mindy Kim and the Trip to Korea. This one comes out on June 8th, 2021, and it's by Lila Lee. Now this book follows Mindy Kim. She's Korean American and she doesn't have a mother anymore because of the sad passing of her mother. So she's trying to live her life with her dad and her try to figure it out together. This story is about her going to Korea to visit her grandparents, and I think this is going to be so good and so wholesome, like mostly because Mindy Kim, like the book series, is just so good. And I think this is so important, especially for Korean Americans, like children who are reading, and to like really embrace their culture and also learn about more about the history of their countries that they come from. So the next book that I want to talk about is this really fun one. This one is actually a graphic novel called Picasso by Remy Lay, and now this one is going to be really interesting. It's about a girl and a dog, and then it's just a dog that's kind of like on the street, and she pretends that it's her dog, but it's actually not. And then this lie is just building bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think it's going to be really interesting. Super excited about it. So the next book that I want to talk about is this book called Made in Korea by Sarah Suck. And now this book comes out actually on May 18th, 2021, I believe. And now this one is actually about a enemies to lovers romance involving like 2 high school students. Basically, our main heroine has started a business with her best friend. It's Korean beauty products. They sell really well in high school, but then the new kid comes along, and then the new kid actually has Korean products himself that was given to him by his Korean mother. And then now everybody wants his Korean products, and now this is kind of like a competition on the playgrounds or in high school of selling Korean products. So I think this one's going to be a really fun story too as well. So the next book that I'm really excited for, and we're entering into the romance portion of this video now, is called The Dating Dare by JC Lee. And now this one comes out on August 3rd, 2021. This one is basically about a girl who normally typically doesn't do one night stands, but what happens is that she kind of really likes her best friend's brother-in-law or something like that. Like it's a weird relationship like that, and they decide to have this like flirty fun relationship where it's just no commitments, you know, one night stands and things like that. And then mostly because our hero is unattached and he needs to go to Paris in a month, so they really can't be together for too long, or could they? So the next book that I'm kind of really excited for is this one called Heart and Soul by Jen Frederick, and this one comes out on May 25th, 2021. This is basically about a Korean adoptee who is different from everybody else in her family, most because everybody in her family is white and she's Korean. Like her father who adopted her passes away and she gets triggered and has an identity crisis, decides to go to Korea to go figure out her culture, to learn more about herself. But what she finds there instead is this very tall, handsome stranger, and it's filled with like a lot of drama, like Korean drama style, and that's how they pitch it. And I'm really excited for it because I watch a lot of Korean dramas, so I'm sure I'm going to really like this one. So the next book that I have to talk about is this really funny one, and this one is actually being turned into a movie already before its debut on our bookshelves, which is pretty interesting. This one's called A For Aunties by Jessie Suntanto, and now this book comes out on April 27th, 2021. Now this one's really fun because it's about an Indonesian Chinese family, and it involves a girl who keeps getting set up on these really bad blind dates. But what happens is that she accidentally kills her blind date, and then now she is hiding the dead body in a freezer, and then that freezer accidentally gets shipped across to this resort that the family kind of like does catering to, and then now it's like the whole family trying to cover up this killing, this murder. And then afterwards her ex-college crush actually comes into the picture too as well, and this is kind of like a romance story, but it also involves murder. So this one should be a very interesting one. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually another Suzanne Park novel. This one's her romance novel that's coming out this year. This one's called So We Met Again by Suzanne Park. This one comes out on August 3rd, 2021. Now this one's really interesting because it involves a female heroine who used to be an investment banker. Then she got fired over a virtual meeting. She got passed over for promotion too as well. Her life was kind of like a mess. And then what happens is that she hears a lot of racist remarks too as well about her Asian heritage, and she decides to just kind of like deliver this really big FU speech in front of everyone, and she goes home and she lives with her parents now, and then she decides to start a Korean cooking YouTube channel that kind of like grows really big and really awesome. And then everybody wants a piece of her profit. So the investment bank that actually kind of like fired her in the first place wants a piece of it, and now they want to buy her out. And then the person that is in charge of this like deal is one of her office like crushes or enemies, and it seems like it's going to be really cute and funny, from an ex-investment banker and the lawyer who's in charge of this deal. So the next book that I want to talk about is Just the Two of Us by Ryu Huang. I can't say HY names, so I'm really sorry for that. But this one comes out, well, it already actually came out on November 12th, 2020. So this one's not a new release, but I just want to talk about this book because it sounds really interesting. Basically, it's about a doctor who should be really focusing on his patients because, you know, patients always come first. But what he really focuses on is the person who's actually making his lunches, who is a girl who owns this food box company, like this lunch box company, and then she's the chef, and then this is their romance between each other. So the next book that I want to talk about is Incense and Sensibility by Sonali Dev, and now this one comes out on July 6th, 2021. This one's basically about a man who kind of just loses it and cannot control his emotions anymore, and he needs to find his center and his balance. So enter our main heroine, who's really good at that and who really challenges herself to kind of like break free and to be like a less stressed person and things like that. So I think this one's going to be really fun. I'm a really huge fan of Sonali Dev's writing. So the last book that I do want to talk about is this one's called The Duke's Princess Bride. It's a historical romance by Amelie Howard, and now this one comes out on January, well, this one actually already came out January 26, 2021, but I'm really excited to read this one. This one's basically about a princess who is a mixed heritage. She is half Indian, she's also half white. Her father dies, and then now she is going to be murdered by everybody because she's like the princess, and then she has no father to protect her. So she needs to flee the country, and then the only ship that's kind of leaving the country is the person that she's ever loved, which is a duke. And then afterwards, now they may have a chance to be with each other. But anyways, that is it for all the Asian romances, Asian books that I really want to read and that I'm really excited for, that are either already released or that are going to be released very soon in the next couple of months. Hopefully you guys added books to your TBR, and hopefully you guys are more aware of what's actually happening in the community and things like that. I hope that you guys are checking out links in my description boxes so that you can educate yourself on what's happening and what's been happening for like a year now. But I'll see you guys again, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Bye.